Hey everybody, Joe, Redneck Collector, coming at you with another video. Just got done watching Billyballgame's recap of the show yesterday, and it kind of got my butt in gear that I needed to do my own recap of what went down the last couple days. It was just an awesome show. So cool to get to hang out with Billy yesterday and Chris, and got to meet Doug. Doug, hope you see this. Really enjoyed hanging out with you as well. It's always fun making new hobby friends. And Mauricio, got to meet Mauricio. I've heard the legend of Mauricio, just never got to meet him. So it was a lot of fun. But anyway, I'll backtrack a little bit to tell you how the entire weekend transpired. Started out Friday afternoon. I had my kids with me. My wife was still out of town, so had to start out the show with both my kids. We went and opened the doors at 3 o'clock at the show at Westport. Very, very excited about it. So we were there, went inside, like 60 tables, 80 tables. I don't know. It's a fairly small show, but very a quality show. Just heavily vintage, and some big time dealers there. We had William Chappell, and I can't remember the name of the other two, but I remember them being at the National. So some real quality vendors involved with this event. Lots of cool autograph signings taking place throughout the entire weekend. So got there, made a lap, really just kind of looking, keeping my kids out of the way of everybody else. And my wife did eventually come take my daughter, rescued her, but my son wanted to stay. He wanted to stay, even though there wasn't a whole lot of Pokemon going on. She still wanted to, or he still wanted to stay and be a part of the show. So he stuck it out, and because I'm very indecisive, I had my budget, blew a little bit of it. My last video talked about that, but I still had a chunk of change to spend at the show, and had my hit list of cards. And I went around, and sure enough, I found my first find was nothing dramatic at all, but how could you say no to a Steve Carlton, lefty himself, 1974 in a PSA 6 that was in the bargain box for $10. I could not purchase this card. I could purchase the raw version of this card in its condition for $10 or less, I'm sure, but couldn't get it slabbed, so had to bring Lefty home for the collection. I'm not necessarily working on a run of him or the 74 set, but for $10, Lefty was coming home with me. Now, my next pickup took me a while to formulate what I wanted to do here, because there was some options, right? William Chappell had one that was sharp corners but off center, and I'm really, as I get further along in my hobby career or hobby life, centering has meant more to me than it used to. I'm not saying I'll never buy something that's not perfectly centered. It's not like that, but it's something that I factors in. So I then found another raw copy that I really, really liked, and the price was very fair. And then I found a PSA 4 that the price wasn't bad for a PSA 4, but it's one of those rare occasions where I think the card, the 4 was overgraded. I think it was a 3 at best, maybe even like a 2.5. But I waffled between that and the other raw card for a good while. Just couldn't make up my mind. Got to see a lot of other hobby friends of mine from the St. Louis Vintage group that I'm a part of. Got to chat with them. My son was being pretty good, so really went back and forth on what I was going to do. And finally, I went back and I looked at the PSA 4 once, and I looked at this one raw once, and I was like, went back and looked at the PSA 4 again, and I just was like, this is not worth the price difference. The PSA 4 had a $375 sticker on it. I'm sure they would have came down a little bit, maybe $350. The other raw was $220, and he took it to $200 for me, so $150 difference. And even though the one I'm about to show probably is a 2.5, maybe a 3 if I'm just extremely lucky, but this was really high on my hit list for the Yogi PC, and it has one of the coolest images probably on any baseball card, but especially on a Yogi card. It is the 1950 Bowman Yogi Berra, and it's pretty well centered. Does have some rounded corners, does have a little surface wrinkle on it that you really have, the light has to hit it right. I don't know that I could make it hit in this, But this card is just absolutely beautiful. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. You can see overall the color's good, the image is good. From what I understand, this was taken in spring training, 1950. I saw what I don't know a whole lot about Type 1s, but at the National, at REA, or one of the big, I think it was REA, they had the original Type 1. I don't know if it's considered a proof. I'm not a photo guy, I don't know, but they had it. It was, kind of front and center as one of their big things they were displaying, so I know it had some value. But it was the original image that was taken during spring training 1950 that they used for this card. And I'm actually working on a book right now, or not working on it, I'm reading a book. I'm not writing any books, but I'm reading John Pesa's book on Yogi Berra called The Life Behind the Mask. And I'm only maybe a quarter of the way through it, but I'm up through 1950, and it's interesting because by 1950, Yogi had been in, multiple World Series and was just knocking the cover off the ball, was like one of the best hitters in the league, especially at catcher. And he held out that spring, and he wouldn't report to spring training because he told his wife and friends, if I show up, I'm going to give in and I'm going to sign, and I'm not going to get my worth. And his wife Carmen was a very big proponent of the business side of things and wanting him to get his full worth and not get taken advantage of because of his good nature. But eventually he relented. He went down. He met, I think it was the GM, maybe the owner at the time, both, and they hashed it out. And Yogi and Carmen had come up with, they were asking for 18, but they were willing to settle for, I believe, $14,000. Amazing to think that was big money back then, but it was. And I think they were offering 11. I don't remember the exact figures, but he went down there. First meeting didn't go well. He stormed off. Eventually they settled. He got his $14,000 and reported to spring training, and went on with his storied Yankee career. So this was just a card that I got to show it one more time. Just love this card. Had to have it in the collection. I believe this is also one of Mike Payne's 300 great baseball cards. So we'll go to PSA to get graded. So it'll check off the Yogi master list, basic list, whatever, and also Mike Payne's 300. So very, very cool. So that was my 2 card pickups that day. And we're getting later in the evening now, and my son's getting kind of restless. There's only so much Pokemon Go that he could play in the corner. The show was small enough that I could leave him in a corner safely. It helped that a friend of mine, Dan, was there for a while near the Beckett booth working on a submission, so I knew he'd kind of keep an eye out for my son too. But I had to get back to him, and he was pretty restless, and I wanted to stay a little bit longer. I was still looking. I said, hey, would you like to meet a Cardinal? And he was like, yeah, who we're going to meet? So I was like, well, let's go buy a ticket. And I know Billy talked about it in his video, and he's right. Autos, they're pricey really for what they are. But Mason Wynn was the only person signing Friday night, and he's an exciting young shortstop for the Cardinals, 22 years old, had a great season, a better offensive season than they thought. They knew what they had as far as a fielding shortstop, but I just realized I'm a little tilted there. I've probably been shooting this whole video tilted. But I am not the type to edit. I just go, if you can't tell, if you've watched my videos. I'm just going to power through. But Mason Wynn knew what they had defensively, was logging 110-mile-an-hour throws a couple years ago across the diamond. But he developed his bat quicker than they thought. He hit about 267 this year, 157 hits, and 15 homers, and I believe it was around 50, 60, maybe 70 RBIs. So a solid year. But my son got to meet him. I filmed it. And, that light is going to make it tough. But there's Mason Wynn's autograph. A bunch of squiggly lines, right? But exciting young player. I think between the baseball and the signature, I got about $80 into that. I didn't have him do an inscription because really his only inscription was MLB debut, which really doesn't do much for me. So I thought signature's good. My son got to go up there and hand it to him. Mason was really, really cool, with my son, and got the autograph, and my son's got a story to tell. I've got a short video of him getting the autograph, and I always think I get more of a kick out of it than if I was the one to go get it myself. So, but that was day one. So headed home, talked to Billy that night. We're excited because plans were finalized. He was coming in with Chris and Mauricio, and he talked about his buddy Doug. At that point I hadn't met, was going to be there, and we chatted for a while, made plans. We're going to meet Saturday morning, get there Saturday morning. I beat them there. I was excited. I got there. I thought it opened at 9. It opened at 9:30, but it was all right because I went ahead and bought my autograph ticket from the autograph I was going to get myself Saturday, and went in, ran into some guys from the vintage group and kind of followed them around, and we hung out at William Chappell's was like kind of the center, like Billy talks about in his video. He's a really nice guy, very willing to talk, show you things, work with you. Highly recommend when you see, William Chappell cards, engage, buy. He's very fair. So Billy showed up, said, "Hey, we're here." I was like, "Oh, I'm right inside to the left." He comes in, Chris comes in, I talked to them. Chris and I had met at the National, but he was feeling no pain that night, so I don't know if he remembered me. He remembered me, and we chatted for a minute, and he's like the mayor when he walks in the room, and Billy, too, they had, their groupies, I think I called them, come over talking to him, but it was really cool to chat with him, and Billy and I got to hang out and really had fun. It was a blast. I met Doug. We moved around. We'd talk and we'd do something, and then we'd get separated for a little bit, but it was small enough that we kind of gravitate back towards each other. And I had a limited time on Saturday because I had to go to, I'm a Cub Scout leader, had to go to a Cub Scout camp out yesterday afternoon. So limited time, and I had already taken a big chunk out of my budget between the Yogi and the autograph and my Burke Ross Musial that I bought before the show. But still, I had a chunk of change left, and I was looking, and I really thought I'm going to check maybe a Hank Aaron off the list for my player run, or maybe a Gibson or a Musial off my list for the player runs. But I just didn't see anything, and I finally was like, there was a card that had been talking to me at William Chappell's table for, the day and a half I'd spent there in the show. And I went back and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it because I don't see very many of those. It was a card I didn't even know about that long ago. And that is the 1950 Royal Desserts Stan Musial. So this is hand cut. It's cut out of from what I understand, a box of like Jello dessert. It's a blank back. You can see it's kind of stained up there. It's got some creasing in it. But it present all the things we vintage collectors like to say. It's got good registration, and it's got good eye appeal still, and all that stuff. And it's got more of a border to it. It's cut a little bit cleaner than a lot of these that I've seen. And he had $225 on it. I offered $200, and he obliged. And that I could have gotten one maybe for around the same price, but it was there. I know, like Greg Midlife talks about, I didn't have to pay, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I didn't pay taxes on it. So I didn't pay taxes on that. Or tax was included, I believe, is the discussion we had. Tax was included. So saved a little bit there and was able to pick this card up. It's going to go off to get graded as well. And it was cool. There's different variations of this Musial. I really didn't care which one I got. But this was the Musial that the second paragraph starts with 207 base hits. The other version starts with 346 batting average, I think. So these were included, like box backs, toppers, whatever, I guess sides, whatever you want to call on a Jello box is how I'm envisioning them. But they were started in 50, and there was also a premium version that was done that you could mail away for. There was a binder or like some kind of holder that you could paste them in or hold them in as well. But just a really, call it oddball if you want, but I think it's also a fairly rare card. You don't see a ton of them. I think at any given time I've seen on eBay, maybe 6 of them going at one time. So they're out there, but it's not something you see a ton of. It really spoke to me as Musial being, a guy that is huge for everybody in St. Louis, but especially, there's my tilt again, especially, for myself, who just thinks he's a great guy, great ball player, underrated. Had to bring it home. $200 seemed like an easy deal. I was like, yep, I'm going to do it. So that was my big pickup of day 2. But the next thing I got to do, actually, I may have done this first, but I had already kind of made my mind up that I was going to do. Billy went with me, was there. It was cool to be there with him, talking through. I was like, I think I'm going to go with the rare card versus something I can get another time. And he was there, got to, shake his hand when I pulled off the deal. It's always fun to have those friends there with you. But before I did that, I told you I bought an autograph ticket This guy doesn't sign very much, and in St. Louis, this guy he is the man for what he did. I don't know if we have any Rangers fans that watch my channel at all, but sorry, but for what this guy did in 2011, this is Mr. David Freese. Signature, he puts his number on there, paid for the extra for the inscription, 2011 World Series MVP. I just, in my lifetime of things I've got to see, especially in a World Series, especially for my hometown Cardinals, absolutely, amazing. What he did. I can remember I was in bed the night that the game was happening, and I was almost asleep. I was kind of dozing off. I'd kind of written it off, and he hit that triple, and my wife and I were like just laying in bed watching TV, and it was like, oh my God, all right, this is back together, and then hits the home run, and the whole "we'll see you tomorrow night," all that just ingrained in my memory. Great memories for us Cardinals fans, and guy that doesn't sign super duper often. I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to pick up his autograph, and a really cool guy. I walk up and I told him, I said, Mr. Freese, I have one question for you if you don't mind. He goes, yeah, sure. What's that? And I said, after that game, after that World Series, have you ever had to pay for a drink or a meal anywhere in St. Louis since then? And he kind of laughed. He said, oh, not hardly. And I said, good, that's the way it should be. And he goes, you really think so? And I said, I said it the night that it happened. I was laying in bed with my wife, and after that performance, I said, that guy will never have to pay for another drink or meal as long as he's in St. Louis. And I hope that holds true, because he truly is a hometown hero and gave us a great World Series championship and victory. So just awesome to meet him, get that autograph, add to the collection, along with the Mason win. Look forward to seeing what he does. Great things, I'm sure. And then Yogi was off my hit list. The Royal Desserts really wasn't. I knew it existed, and it was on my radar, and I had a saved search for it, and it was one that I had thought about, but it definitely wasn't planned. There was other cards that I really thought I'd bring home in front of it, but this one just kind of spoke to me, and I was like, Joe, you can get a 1959 Hank Aaron, any other time. They're available. So that's why I decided to bring this one home. So great show. Got to hang out a little bit with Doug and Billy. We went out and just kind of shared stories, had some cards with me I was showing off, and just a good time. Was really disappointed I had duty called, and I had a blast at my Cub Scout camp out. The kids are great, but really could have stayed there the whole rest of the show and talked to those guys. So that's what it's all about, right? That's why I'm making these silly videos in my basement, and I appreciate you all being my support group and listening to me talk about baseball cards and commenting and liking and putting out. A lot of you put out videos that I also enjoy. So really appreciate the entire card community. I've started using that hashtag on my videos, but I really do. Even if you don't make videos, you just comment. I love those comments. I love the engagement, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. I'm at 18 minutes. I'm not going to subject you to any more of my rambling, but appreciate you all very much. We'll see you on the next one.